You're listening to Toronto's #1 real estate podcast, powered by Watson Estates. The most successful local real estate investing starts right here, right now. Here's your host, broker, investor, and social media influencer, Bradley Watson.
Good morning, investors. Bradley here from Watson Estates. It is July 14th, 2020, and it is a beautiful day to talk about our favorite subject, Toronto real estate. We are #1 on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts for that very topic. And you know what we've been doing around here? We've been analyzing the latest news, getting up to date on what's been going on. More so because I, as an investor, want to know when is a good time to buy, when's a good time to sell, and what exactly is happening in our local market today. And today we got some great content. We're going to start off talking about how does Canadian real estate prices stack up against the United States. Then we're going to transition into what can psychology do to Toronto's real estate market. You guys know I love the idea of knowing what is the overall feeling of the market, what is the sales pitch being given by the media in our marketplace, and you're going to see why during that article. And to wrap it all up, of course, you know Phase 3 has been announced, and we're going to start to see things roll out across our province. But will listings begin to host open houses once again? We're going to talk about what that could look like. So, as it relates to open houses, I was thinking through it this morning, and you know what? That may be why I've been losing weight during COVID. Rule #1 of open houses, don't eat all the cookies. I actually have held like barbecues at open houses, and people suspiciously don't want free hot dogs and hamburgers. They actually look at you like, really? It's free? What's the catch? So you'd be surprised how many cookies get left over, which leaves us little fatties to have to eat them at the end. But you know what really matters and drives me nuts is these kids running around, unattended children. What I'll probably do when open houses start up again is I'll create a little sign. You know, it kind of says, take your shoes off and no food. But my sign will say, unattended children will get a Red Bull, kazoo, and a new puppy. Got to incentivize that. Incentivize good behavior. So let's transition into the first article of the day as it relates to Toronto real estate. This one comes from betterdwelling.com. It's an interesting analysis. I'm going to kind of pick at it. But the headline says this: Canadian real estate prices grew over 29 times the rate of U.S. home prices. Here's how the article starts. Canadians know real estate prices have grown very quickly, but most likely have no idea how fast. Well, let's hear about it. I think you're going to tell us. U.S. Federal Reserve data shows when U.S. home prices took a dive during the Great Recession, Canadian prices didn't. Instead, Canada has flooded the market with a number of policies designed to increase the amount of debt households can carry. Consequently, Canadian home prices have seen prices grow not twice or even 10 times as fast as U.S. home prices. They've grown a whopping 29x, 29 times faster. We're going to get into it, whether that's legitimate or I think they're kind of playing the numbers on you a little bit, but that's okay. The point here is Canadian real estate rocks and American real estate sucks, right? And coming out of a place like Better Dwelling, obviously the underlying thinking here is, well, we're overpriced. When you put us on an international stage, we're overpriced. That's Canadian. Forget Toronto. Toronto's even more. So as we go down further in this article, here's some of the stats they say. The Canadian real estate prices have been on a tear. Talking about even recently, the price of a home in Q1 2020, so pre-COVID, is up 2.4% from the previous quarter. Compared to last year, prices are up 3.4% once adjusted for inflation. Over the 12-month period, all the annual growth came from just the two most recent quarters. In other words, they haven't spelled it further than that, but in other words, our market has actually been accelerating in price. If you take Q1 and Q2, including COVID, we have been accelerating in price, even adjusted for inflation, actually especially adjusted for inflation. So Canadian real estate prices, when we look at the US now, the price of a home in Q1 was up only 0.5% from the previous quarter. Compared to last year, prices are up 3.3% once adjusted for inflation. This was the slowest annual rate of growth for the U.S. home prices since 2013. While Canadian price growth is accelerating, U.S. home price growth is decelerating. And so I want to kind of explain to you the little image that they had here, because it actually really helps. If you look at from what they've been tracking, there's been blips where, Canadian real estate has kind of taken off and done really well, and then it's kind of come back in line with American prices. But there seems to be this big fat old disconnect in between 1975 to 2008, pretty much straight shot. As soon as 2008 happened, what we saw was U.S. prices came down a lot. In fact, it says from 100 to 75, so they've dropped by a quarter in prices and have since been trying to get it all the way back in 2020. They're now starting to reach their prices that they saw in 2008. In other words, they haven't seen any price growth since 2008. But you guys know locally we have seen a ton of price growth. When we start from that same number, that 100 figure, we are pushing from back in 2017 even, and where we're getting back to now, we're pushing that 200 mark. We have almost doubled. So when you're saying we are 29 times faster in growth, that is coming from specifically 2008, where the United States has pretty much had no growth since 2008, and we have had all of the growth, as you know, since 2008. So don't get caught up too much, but what is being said in this article is absolutely, there's a big case to be made that Canada and Toronto as well there's a lot of people that say we are, quote, overvalued. And I have a lot of trouble wrapping my head around that because it's so subjective. Overvalued to what? And I mean, I'm still waiting. I've said this in past podcasts. I'm waiting for someone to explain to me, why can you call us overvalued, right? This bubble, right? If there is a bubble, we need to be able to, can you quantify it? Is there a way of saying this is why we're in a bubble? Like we've seen things like debt ratios, right? But debt ratios don't directly line up with prices. So what is it specifically that makes us overvalued? I think what this says to me is if you've wanted to make money in real estate since 2008, you had to do it in Canada, not in the United States. So if you're going to invest in a market that's succeeding, it's here. It's not there. Now, if you were to look at this illustration and say, well, look at this, Canadian prices are so much higher and Americans are starting to get to their price where they were in 2008. So there's a deal there. I don't know if I buy that argument because I want to be in the place that experiences growth. I don't want to be in a place that has such volatility and hasn't seen steady growth. I think a lot of this comes from the stability of our financial market, but whatever it is, whatever you get out of that, these are the facts. Canadian real estate has done incredibly well. Specifically, Toronto has done incredibly well when you put us on the global stage. And time will tell because we are starting to see a big uptick in prices here locally. And of course, we have a bumpy road ahead, as we've talked about in past podcasts. I'm not going to take away the fact that there's a lot of risks. There's a lot of risks everywhere right now. But what we've seen as a trend is whenever there's been volatility globally, the Canadian market seems to outperform and do better in those climates. All right, let's move right along. Let's talk about psychology. That course you had to take because you need an elective to get out of university. That's probably rude. I apologize, any psychology majors. My wife actually loves psychology. Bad news for me. All right, so what can psychology do to Toronto's real estate market? This came out of an article, and I love it. It's the kind of article I don't think people really, they kind of graze over it, and they're like, it's an archive article. In fact, it's from CBC/archives. That's where it comes from. And what they're doing is they're reminiscing of the good old days in the 80s, before I was born. 1982. What happened in 1982? Listen to this headline, the subtext. Buyer confusion over incentive programs led to a stagnant market in 1982. You guys wonder why I talk about this feeling of the market. When we're running around, we're doing all these deals, often the feeling that I experience, and this is why I think podcasts like this are so valuable, is you get this idea of what's happening with honesty, right? Because I could sell you a dream. In either case, I could tell you that things are crashing and tell you things are doing great. But if I am being honest about what I'm seeing, that feeling happening in the market is often a good indication of what's coming in the short term. But beyond just the feeling on the short term is this idea of psychology and what the media is selling. Like, are we selling? Even last week, we saw a lot of optimism, whereas this week, we're starting to see a little bit more of hesitation coming out of some news sources. And of course, different news sources, people rely on different avenues of getting their news. And as you get a majority in one particular camp, oftentimes that will lead what happens in the market. And so I love this illustration from what happens in 1982, and it can teach us so much as investors of what we can expect to happen today. The stagnant nature of the Toronto housing market in July 1982. So here's what they did, okay? They experienced, where is it here? I want to read it right from the article if I can. Okay, I'm gonna jump around a little bit. I understand what happened. Oh, here it is. Home sales across Canada were down, listed as in advance of this happening, 25% over the previous year. Okay, so we've got a 25% drop in sales. Does that sound like not a lot? Today it does, but that's still pretty significant. And it appeared to be even worse in Toronto. So what happened then is they said, the federal government, as part of their budget, they included incentives for would-be homebuyers, and specifically first-time homebuyers, of a $3,000 grant. But no further details were forthcoming. So they didn't give you any more info. They just said, we're going to build it into the budget. We're going to give a grant for first-time homebuyers to try and, stimulate the economy. They also had this program where mortgage rates were going to be 6% lower. They were planning to bring them down, but what they said is it required a government-appointed panel of, quote, financial experts, and it was not certain whether such a program would ever be implemented. So they said, we're going to have, first of all, there's going to be $3,000 for all you first-time buyers. Whoop-de-doo. Like, this is great, right? If this happened today, no issue. But because it was so new and there was a lot of uncertainty, it added to the problem. And then you say, we're going to potentially drop interest rates 6%. Well, why would you do that? Are you saying it's a bad market? Are we in trouble? And is it even going to happen? And if it did, it wouldn't have been until September. So what happens? Buyers start waiting. I could get a 6% discount. Great. Sounds good to me. You had listings sitting on the market already for a long time, and it got so much worse. At the time, by the way, the interest rate sat at 16.5%. That was kind of where they are, according to the Globe and Mail. And becoming becoming increasingly desperate. So now buyers are holding out. So what was intended to be an incentive for buyers, prices it's going to become more affordable. We're going to have discounts. It's going to be great. We're going to stimulate our marketplace. Immediately smacked them in the face. And everyone became in a wait and see attitude. So what this tells you, what this shows you, the irony is that nothing should have happened. If anything, it should have helped the market, right? But it didn't. And why not? Because of psychology. Psychology did it. Oftentimes, psychology is the reason markets go up and they go down. It's not the fundamentals, ironically. So if you're trying to time the market, you want to find an opportunity in there and recognize there is no new thing under the sun. This has happened. It's been happening since before I was born. Very interesting article. I love going back in the archives and seeing how things happen and how history repeats itself. Will we look back at COVID and think, wow, people really might have over freaked out. They were reopening and there was a bit of a deal there. I don't know why we maybe didn't jump into that, right? 2 months ago. We might already be thinking that. Or 2017. Why did we freak out a little bit when when the foreign buyer tax came in? I mean, really, we've got less than 5% foreign buyers. Most people are moving here anyways. When we look back, it's obvious. But is it so obvious when it's right in your face and the for sale signs are popping up and they're not selling? Are you going to be the sucker that jumps into that low market? I guess your investments will tell on you. All right, let's go on to phase 3. You guys ready? I was reading through some of the things on phase 3. The list is quite extensive. The highlights of it, I guess, is indoor gatherings will be able to have 50 people, outdoor gatherings up to 100 people, and personal gatherings, of course, still maintain a 10-person circle or meetup fine. And of course, as we thought, or as we expected, there was we're staggering this. So there are a number of markets that will not be open right away, including Durham, Haldimand, Norfolk, Halton, Hamilton, Lambton, Niagara, Peel, Toronto, Windsor, Essex, and York. Everybody else seems to be open, right? And you can go, if you want to see the full list of what opens, go do that. Go check it out. It's so extensive. It's not worth putting in too much time in here. But one of the things that jumped out to me when I ran through that list was open houses. And we received an email from OREA, the Ontario Real Estate Association, to all its members saying, this is kind of what's going on. And now, just as a heads up, if you didn't catch the news, real estate agents are going to, with phase 3, be allowed to have open houses. So here's what they said. For regions entering stage 3, the province has lifted the prohibition on real estate professionals hosting open houses. Real estate professionals may begin hosting open houses provided that they adhere to the province's indoor gathering. Okay, yeah, we need limits, right? We got to have limits because we got to protect people when they're coming in the home. We got to protect the home itself. So it's good they have limits. What's that limit? 50 people. I've never had a house party with that many people in my house. Anyways, imagine an open house. What a backlash. I should have an open house party of 50 people. Yeah, I'm going to get sued just for saying that. But like that, come on. There's got to be limits, right? But now they say be smart, right? They tell you, like, obviously you need to maintain physical distancing. So we're going to need to make sure we got like a 5,000 square foot house. We're going to need to space everyone out 2 meters. We're just going to kind of sit there, and then we're going to call CP24, tell them to come in, come take some pictures, but kind of through the windows because we can't add any more people to this 50 people maximum within the house. It's crazy. It's crazy. So forget the maximums. But the fact is, now we can do open houses once Stage 3 rolls out, which is coming to a city near you. Aurelia will soon be publishing guidance for members, so they're going to give us more insight. And so it has some people kind of pissed off, including our buddy John Pasalis. He is actually quite negative. He says this: allowing real estate open houses as part of Stage 3 is a terrible idea. They are not critical to our business, unlike indoor seating at restaurants. There should be no open houses till at least 2021. Okay, I'm not going to agree with this necessarily, because here's my thinking. If I can correct what he said, instead of saying they are not critical to our business, I'm going to say no, they are not critical to your business. But there is a lot of people, and mine as well. I don't use open houses, really. I'll do them for clients if they ask for it, but it's not all that necessary. Oftentimes I'll have an assistant or someone run it for us. However, there are many salespeople who heavily rely on open houses, right? Some realtors generate all their leads from open houses. They're really good at it. So some agents are affected. But realistically, let me tell you a story before I tell you what I think is how it's going to affect your house, okay? This is my favorite open house story. I had a property out in Markham, right? Predominantly Asians. In fact, and that's not a racist statement at all, because the English is actually the fourth most spoken language in that area. Right? They're speaking all of the China out there, and they are not speaking a word of English. So I had people coming out to my property. I was closing, open house, 2 to 4. That's what you got. 4 o'clock comes, keys in the door, closing it, locking up, go grab my signs. All of a sudden, this cute little Asian family of about 15 people shows up, and they don't speak a lick of English. Okay. And I'm waiting. I'm ready to go. I'm saying, you know what? I got to sell this house. We're taking offers in a couple days on it. Okay, fine. Like I through my actions and through my facial expressions, I tried to hide the fact that I was upset. And I said, come on in. Of course, this is pre-COVID, so no limits. And there wasn't 50 people anyway, so we were okay. But as I'm standing at the front door, watching these people kind of go around, I look outside, and the kids are standing outside, right? There's a couple, a son and a daughter and maybe a grandma or something. And all of a sudden, this little kid starts pissing on the front lawn. Like in the middle, broad daylight, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, pissing on the front lawn. And I'm like, first of all, what do I say? Because I don't speak Chinese. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to let's just get this over with. Let's just go home. 30 seconds later, the little girl thinks it's a great idea. She drops her pants and starts pissing on the front lawn too. So now I got 2 kids pissing on the front lawn and a family that came in late. I'm supposed to be grabbing signs, which of course is driving more people to this property. All this to say, it is not necessary for you to have an open house in order to sell your home. Definitely not. All that's happening is you're fattening the local realtor, eating all those cookies with no one touching them. And during COVID, don't touch my cookies anyways. I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully you learned some fun stuff. You're kind of keeping up to date with what's going on in our marketplace. I know as an investor, I love hearing the news, and I hope you do too. Leave us a comment, hit that subscribe button, send us a like. If you don't like our comments or you don't like what we're doing, just move on to the next guy. There's plenty of people out there to get angry at. And I'll see you guys tomorrow with more. Take care and keep it real.